Good evening, everyone. Many thanks. Great to see so many people here tonight. My name's Adam Toms. I'm the CEO of OpenFin over in Europe. Great to be back here in New York and see so many familiar faces. And yeah, thanks again for helping to keep the noise down a little bit. We did solve the bar problem by putting the drinks on the table, which is, so feel free to grab any spare chairs as well at the tables if that's possible. But thanks for joining me on this panel this evening. I'm joined by Dolan from Barclays, Kim from BMO, Jeffery from Introhive, and we're going to be having a conversation about CRMs and data intelligence.
What could be more exciting than that?
What could be more exciting than that? Exactly.
Absolutely nothing.
Give us a chance, Kim.
So I do like to use a technique that I use with my children to get people to be quiet. And I don't do it much now because they're 16, but I used to do this. Shh. Oh, wow. Turns out it's still very effective. Yeah. Don't have to do that so much now with a 16-year-old, but it was very effective when they were younger. Anyway, so let's get into this. So CRM and client intelligence platforms. Yeah, before we start, let's take a moment. Let's introduce ourselves a little bit more. Brian, do you want to go first, just to introduce yourself?
Sure. I just realized I'm wearing the same jacket and shirt as in the photo from the thing, which
there
was
we go.
3 years ago. So this is the first time I've managed to get out of the house in 3 years or so. Brian Dolan from Barclays. I manage all of the CRM for our institutional businesses, markets research, corporate bank, and some other businesses for Barclays.
Great, thanks. Kim.
Kim Prado. I'm responsible for capital markets in the U.S. as well as banking and client technology at BMO.
At BMO.
And I'm Jeffery Parish. I'm the head of industry strategy for Introhive. So I always think about data analytics and insights and how do we make that sexy and exciting.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So let's take a step back and start with the very basics of why do we have a CRM in the first place? What are the fundamental reasons for having a CRM? Kim, maybe you want to take that one first.
Well, so if you think about it, right, how are we supposed to understand our footprint with our clients if we don't capture all the data, right? So that's the first thing. But when you think about CRM, I think about data strategy, and I think about reducing the fire hose effect on the data and making it smart and making it really easy to surface actionable insights. If you think about how CRM could be interpreted outside of that, people would traditionally think, oh, I'm going to enter a call report, I'm going to enter a contact, I'm going to key. And really the goal of CRM is to capture all the interactions and bring them together to create next best action. And we live in this arms race of data, right? Where every single person is trying to bring data together to deliver something useful to their business person so that they can take action. And it comes back to, is your client data clean and can you use it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, great. And so, Jeffery, from the Introhive perspective, that layer above, like you're reliant on that fundamental CRM underneath. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question because at the same time, I'm a huge evangelist for CRM, but also probably one of the worst users of CRM. I've been expected to enter the data as well. And as Kim was saying, it's about the quality of the data. And when you have challenges getting that data into the CRM, then everyone in the organization knows that it's not accurate, it's not up to date, it's not reliable, and then adoption becomes an impossible task to have. And so at Introhive, we look at it from the perspective of making sure that we collect that data, all that interaction, passively to remove, the friction, remove the mundane task of data entry, but still make sure that the organization gets those data points so we can make the CRM work for the users and provide the actionable insights that the business actually needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so you mentioned the word adoption, and I think that's a great one to drill into. Actually, on one of the prep calls, Brian and I figured out we used to work for the same firm, and we reminisced around the same story of, at our old firm, to have your expenses reimbursed, you had to fill in a CRM call report. And that was one of the kind of the methods of trying to force people to use CRMs. But Brian, maybe we can dig into it. What have been the challenges around getting users to adopt CRM, and also how do senior managers think about the value of CRM?
Yeah, so I remember that you had to input a call report to get your expenses paid, and people worked out pretty quick that our algorithm was binary, so they just put in good meeting, and then they got their expenses paid. So adoption is the key word. When we were rolling out a recent CRM to our... Seriously, this is really, really interesting. You should know. Adoption. We actually coined the phrase minimum adoptable product because we realized that if you roll something out and people don't use it, then that's useless. So the first thing is you have to make the user interface frictionless, as frictionless as you can, and design the user experience around the salespeople and the bankers. We had a very senior banker say to me, I want this designed so that it puts more beans in the jar, doesn't count the beans. That was his main thing, right? I don't want it designed by the business management team, or I don't want it designed for senior managers. I want it designed for a salesperson and a banker who's out on the road. And that results in a lot of less is more, kind of remove fields, remove noise. So that's the first thing. Make it as easy to use as possible and focused on the revenue generators. The second thing is mobile. That's obviously a given. And then the third thing is integration with other systems, so there's no duplicate entries and et cetera. And one of the things that we created was, I think, a fairly best-in-class Outlook plugin, which we created using a combination of Outlook, OpenFin, and Salesforce, where we use OpenFin as the channel back to Salesforce. But all the content is rendered inside of Outlook, and it's rendered using the OpenFin container, and it's really good and very slick. And so if you do those three things, then at least you're saying that this is a system that's easy to use and minimizes hassle. And then the final thing is data, which Jeffrey just mentioned. And I'll talk about that more in the next question. I've just given away the secret that you gave us the questions in advance.
Yeah, but, perfect. It's supposed to be unscripted.
If he
this is a natural panel.
About that, then I will answer it then.
Perfect. Great. And so, Kim, I've got a surprise question for you.
I love surprises.
Yeah, and the surprise question is how have you helped your users with the adoption of CRM?
It's really simple. Tell them something they didn't know in the system, right? Highlight an actionable insight that they did not know about. And to do that, you need, as Jeff mentioned earlier, passive CRM. Yeah. And it's all about data, like what Brian said, but really capturing all the insights automatically and then serving up an insight that would not have come to fruition had the data not been brought together and surfaced.
Absolutely. So, Jeffrey, we've mentioned data insights several times, and this now moves into the kind of client intelligence piece of this, and that value add to give to users to get them hooked. So, a good place for us to stop and just understand Introhive, what you're doing. And I know later on at the very end we've got a quick video as well to visually demonstrate what the next generation of client intelligence looks like. But yeah, feel free to introduce Introhive.
So Introhive is a client intelligence platform. And I like to think we focus on relationship intelligence. So in the CRM conversation, it's client or customer relationship management. But when you think about it, what is it actually telling you about the relationships that you have with the client? There's a lot of static data in there. There's a lot of reports that you can run on what happened maybe in the past. But there's not a lot that you can pull that actually helps you move forward and helps you adjust your strategy. And so Introhive, we really focus on bringing those relationship insights into the CRM. We start with relationship mapping and scoring. So this is, it's a simple solution for a complex problem. We're going to give you easy visibility to everyone in your organization who is touching your contact. If you're looking for a specific contact or looking at an account, you can now see everyone within the organization who has had interaction with them and at what level. So we're going to tell you how strong is that relationship. How often are they communicating? How frequent? What does the response look like? So that's how we're driving our relationship scoring. And so now you can easily use that data and visibility to what I like to look at as 3 C's, cross-sell. So now if I need a warm introduction, into a client, I now can look and easily see who can I go internally to get that warm introduction from. Collaboration, because clients expect a unified approach from the organization. And so now I have the opportunity to go in and understand everybody who has been talking to this client so we can all get on the same page. Make sure we're all singing the same song and providing consistent levels of service. They also expect us to be proactive in terms of solutioning. So now we can talk about how do we provide holistic solutions and be proactive, think towards the future, and come as a unified front to help grow with that client. And the third C is continuity. People leave organizations. It's going to happen, but you don't want that to create a negative experience for your clients. So if you have visibility into everyone who has been communicating with that client and again, the level of that interaction and the frequency, you're now going to be able to devise plans when there are organizational shifts and changes, maybe some account changes, people leave. You can now make sure you know who the best person is to communicate some of this information, succession planning, all those types of things. And so we take all of this information and we've got all of our secret sauce and how do we pull that up. But again, we make it very easy for a salesperson or anyone needing this information to access that, take that information and then strategize on how you're going to get into the client and grow that relationship.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with that, and having worked in large organisations, I can definitely see the value of that. And Brian, I know you've done a huge amount of work around this at Barclays as well, but it'd be great just to hear from the practitioner's point of view. What do you see, and do you agree with Jeffrey?
Yeah, 100%. I have this phrase I talk about, insights and intelligence and all this stuff is great, and using machine learning and sentiment analysis and all these things that get you to insights and get you to what Kim called the most important thing, which is tell someone something they didn't know that they can then use when they talk to a client. We're trying to what we're trying to do at the moment is achieve the unicorn of CRM implementations, which is take all of our institutional businesses, markets, institutional research, corporate, payments, our US credit card business that deals with like JetBlue and companies like that, get them all to use the same standard sales hierarchy, the same single Salesforce org, one version of everything, and then from that point on, I call that step zero. So step zero is everyone's looking at the client the same way. We know if someone met with Airbnb last week that it is the same Airbnb that someone else met with. Before we did this project, we had 5 different CRMs, 5 different businesses, and Airbnb spelled 5 different ways. It was like Airbnb Global and Inc. and whatever. So we're focused on that because once you get to what I call step zero, now what you have is really, really good data that you can rely on. Because back to adoption, if you have people using a CRM system and they go into the CRM system and they see something that's not right and they know it's not right, it's a little bit like when Apple brought out Apple Maps. And you were using Apple Maps and maybe 50% of the time it would take you to completely the wrong place. And with Salesforce, if you go into the system and it says that so-and-so is the treasurer of this company, or it says that this salesperson covers this client and has a great relationship with them, and it's wrong, then they don't believe anything else that they see in the system. You're kind of toast at that point. So data is the most important thing. And once you get to that, then you can feed things like Introhive, very high quality data. And then instead of what we do at the moment is we manually do things like this person has a great relationship with that person. We could actually use a product like Introhive because it can trust the data that we're giving it. So I really do think that it's all about the data.
And I'm actually going to jump in and say Introhive will help you actually
I'll take 4. How much do they cost?
Yeah. So we're going to help feed data into your CRM and make sure that it's accurate and complete.
Excellent.
Yeah, it really finishes the loop for sure. It really does. So we talked about adoption earlier. We talked about the early days of adoption, the things you can do, and there's some powerful things there that you guys described. Brian, you talked about the Outlook integration you had built with Salesforce and those snapshots. Kim, you talked about linking data together with workflows and Interop as well. But Kim, where do you think this goes next? How do we continue on this adoption journey as well as these? So we're getting these great data insights. What do we need to do to make the users really buy into them?
I really think the key is interoperability, right? And bringing the data to where they are today. You're never going to get somebody to go look at something that isn't part of their workflow, right? So one of the hardest parts of running a client technology stream is the fact that the applications they need to use are optional, right? They're not necessarily ticketing or looking at P&L all the time. So with that, it's really important that you've got the data structured and organized, and you've got analytics on top that make sense, and that you're serving it up in a customized client experience. And that is the key. If it looks good and it's shiny and it's hooked into what their normal daily workflow is, you have a fighting chance. And I can tell you, like, I've seen it work, and it's possible, but it takes time, and it takes rigor, and it takes structure to get there. But so in my previous role, I built out all the interop and all the UX and all of that good stuff. And now in my new role, I'm buying it because we're going to leverage the OpenFin workspace, which you guys saw in the beginning. And that's not a marketing plug, it's just the truth. So you don't need to build all these things anymore. Really being able to use the notification service to highlight a proactive, actionable insight will be a game changer.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And you know, you kind of touched on a couple of things there around that data insight, that being valuable. You also talked about personalization, and you know, this is something we talk a lot about. You know, we've got really used to this great experience in our consumer life, like very heightened personalization. And the more we can transform that for users onto the desktop, and they're getting what they need, it's relevant to them, personalized to them. It makes it more powerful. So Jeffrey, from like Introhive's perspective, where are you going with like personalization, and what's your ultimate goal? What are you aiming to deliver for people going forward?
Yeah, no, we're working on some really interesting and cool stuff. Has anybody ever seen that movie, He's Just Not That Into You? So we're looking at that from the business perspective. How do you know when your client or your prospect is just not that into you? And we're bringing in behavioral science to start looking at response trends and the timing. You know, there's a different story when someone typically responds to you within 2 business days and that suddenly turns into 2 weeks. That tells you something. So how can we surface these type of insights to you faster so you can prioritize your deals, prioritize clients better, to really just get to the money faster is what it comes down to. So we're looking at all types of behavioral science application to our scoring models and algorithms, dashboards that tell the full story. I look at it as the story of us. I like that full story of, you know, from acquisition all the way through the customer life cycle. How can we visualize that better? So doing a lot of exciting things.
Yeah.
May I just add to that? So with Introhive, right? I mean, if you think about the complexity of the client base, I mean, at BMO, there's probably 30,000 accounts that we deal with, right? And so through the Introhive platform, it's very easy to see, you know, where your opportunity is. And that's really the key, is taking this tooling and visualizing the data, right? To your point.
Yeah, I owe her $50 now.
150.
I think one really important point when we talk about insights and algorithms and all that kind of stuff going forward, like the step 1 and the step 2, is that you should never think of that stuff replacing a banker or replacing a salesperson. That's just flawed thinking. What you should think about it is complementing them. And so giving them information. So the kind of thing what we would like to get to, the nirvana we would like to get to, is that we have, let's say, a lot of data feeds and a lot of information, a lot of interaction information, whatever, and we can use that to build a profile of, you know, Jane, asset manager at Fidelity or something, right? And say, so when there's an event, it could be a corporate action where somebody buys somebody, or there's a jobs report, or a change in interest rates, or something like that, you know. Is Jane an early mover? Is she a late mover? Does she tend to do whatever? And then, you know, if you can arrange a situation where a salesperson or a banker can call Jane at the right time with the right information, then you're making their job so much easier. And then that will obviously lead to revenue, et cetera, but it's absolutely critical. I mean, we've run a few proof of concepts where we actually successfully implemented one block trade, I think it was of Amazon shares or something, where, you know, we did a proof of concept, and it was like, here's like 10 feeds, and, you know, here are the 10 people you should call in this order, and, you know, they got a lucky strike on number 3 or something like that, and they put it down, let's say 50% to our algorithm or something, maybe 50% to their persuasive skills or something, right, because they're a salesperson. But I think it's a really important theme You're not replacing bankers or salespeople.
Yeah.
You're just complementing them.
Yeah.
Then you get their engagement and their buy-in and stuff, and because it's unrealistic to think that you're going to have an algorithm that's going to persuade Jane to buy Amazon shares. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think this is the crux, isn't it? There's so many great applications, there's so many great data insights that are now being delivered, but we've got to help the users navigate that on their desktop, and that's the real key here. And Jeffrey, I know we're going to show a little bit of Introhive in OpenFin as well in just a second, but first of all, I have some really important information for everybody in the room. Really important.
Does it involve the bar?
It doesn't involve the bar, but it's very important information everybody should be aware of. Brian, what box set are you watching at the moment? What show are you watching?
Oh, my favorite show of recent times is Barry. Has anybody watched Barry?
Yes.
Oh, you have to watch Barry. There's a new series out. I'm about
Just
to
now.
watch that, so I'm a huge fan of Barry.
Love that. Kim?
I'm really embarrassed to say this, but it's Alias.
Jeffrey?
Unpopular opinion, but I am forcing myself through Ted Lasso.
Oh, that's
Look at the
It's
reaction.
not doing it for me. It's not doing it for me, but I'm trying.
Oh, really?
I'm trying.
Oh, keep going, keep
Everybody
going.
keeps telling me that.
Uplifting program. Love, it's great.
You've just lost all credibility, Jeffrey. You realize that? Everything you just said. I'm not buying Introhive now.
Transparency and authenticity.
Okay, right, so guys, we are going to step over here. Some magic is going to happen with the screen is going to come down, and then we're going to have a little look at Introhive running on OpenFin, and Jeffrey, feel free to provide any other commentary. But for now, thank you, Brian, thank you, Kim, thank you, Jeffrey, so much, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
As an investment banker, I'm starting my workday off in the OpenFin workspace. For accounts I'm targeting, I want to see some customer intelligence around who knows who, and at my target account, Stellar Mobile here, really who can give me that warm introduction I'm looking for? We're able to show revenue, relationship strength, employee counts, so some general information on Stellar Mobile before I dive in to see what contacts do I have connections with. So looking through these contacts here, Mike, Sarah, Jacob, I'm able to see information such as how many relationships we have, what the top relationship strength is, and when the last interaction was. More importantly, we're able to show the top connected colleagues. So you don't have to worry about going to someone to ask for an introduction over an email, go to LinkedIn, try to source a connection there. You're able to see those introductions and look through those connected colleagues to understand when that last interaction took place, how strong their relationship is, as well as ask for an introduction over Slack. You'll also notice the Salesforce icon. That'll launch me into Salesforce, where the Introhive App Exchange package comes into play. You've got 49 relationships with Stellar Mobile. Within here, you can dive into each one of those contacts to search their connections or search for the CEO. So based on the title, I see Sarah here, just like I was looking in OpenFin, and I can dive in to see who is Sarah connected to. So Carlos, Sanjay, and Eric here have all had recent interactions and have a strong relationship with that contact. We're able to show top connected colleagues, so you don't have to worry about those mass emails, and the breakdown of where do those connections sit from a seniority and a department standpoint. Lastly, we focus on the relationship health. How is the relationship trending up or down with this account over time so that we're able to identify strengthening and weakening trends with our customers. In close, I hope you saw the value of how Introhive provides firm-wide visibility into existing relationships and customer intelligence to get more meetings and accelerate a faster path to success.